Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We on the Column EDC Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen, we are excited to have Marsha Massey on with us today. And she, of course, runs our tourism bureau and commission, right? They're two separate entities. And so wears a couple hats and is quite the expert around tourism for us. She formerly ran the Washington State Tourism Board, and prior to that, she had a long, successful career with Westin Hotels. So thank you for joining us, Marsha. And just a few housekeeping details. Please ensure you keep your computer on mute, if you would, so we don't inadvertently pick up any background noises. And if you'd like to ask Marsha any questions, you can either raise your hand or put those in the chat. So with that, Marsha, thank you so much for joining us, and please take it away.
Thanks, Colleen. It's always a pleasure to be here with this group. I feel like I see many of you at different things, so sometimes I think I've been here more often than I have, but I actually was looking back and it was last July that I was with you. So I thought I would kind of dive in with a high level recap of where we ended up 22, just to set the stage for what we're looking at for 23. So I know some of you on the call have attended our Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission meetings in the past, and I will apologize up front if some of this is a little bit redundant, but I see a lot of new names and faces here that I don't usually see. So hopefully this will be interesting information for you. So Colleen, I can share my screen, I presume. All right, let me do that. Okay. Sorry. No. I have a new computer, so that's my excuse for trying to find all the bits and pieces here. Okay, can you all see that? Okay, great.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's just kind of take it from the top here. And as Colleen said, I am happy to run questions at any time. I can't see the chat, so I'll leave that to Colleen and Lori. So, you know, just to start off on a positive note, it's 8 o'clock. It's always, we're pretty photogenic out here. Lots of people like to take lots of pictures of us. So thought I would just start by saying 22 was a mighty fine year for the Olympic Peninsula from a tourism standpoint. I mean, not only did we rebound very successfully from the COVID shutdowns for the most part, but there were a lot of new things that were starting to happen. We saw public transportation shuttle up to Hurricane Ridge. I think that's been being talked about at least as long as I've been here. So that was a great step forward. We saw new assets built like the Port Angeles pump track and new events popping up and just visitors out enjoying themselves once again. And, you know, every couple of months or so, I check on the Tree of Life and she's still standing. So I think all is right in the world as long as the Tree of Life is still standing. I know these are small numbers and you won't really be able to see them. And if this is of interest to any of you, I'm happy to email you the document. But one of the measurements that we look at, sort of our common currency, if you will, is the impacts of lodging tax revenue. It's a measurement, it's not the only measurement. But I think what I would like to tell you here, and I've pulled, we track it for Clallam, Jefferson, Grays Harbor, and Mason. I just pulled the Clallam County piece of it. So it's tracked by unincorporated Clallam County, and then the three major municipalities, Port Angeles, Sequim, and Forks. And for those of you that aren't familiar with lodging tax, basically it is a combination of a 2% give back, if you will, from the sales tax that is charged on lodging stays, plus 2% special hotel motel tax that is allowed on all lodging stays. And that's everything from your traditional hotels and national park lodges to campsites and RV parks. Includes Airbnb and most of the short-term rentals. The upshot of all of this is that year-end 2022 compared to year-end 2021, our lodging tax revenues were at 3.7 million. They were up 12.5% over 2021, over the previous years. So we've been on a really good trajectory. It just keeps going up except for the pandemic year. So 12.5% increase year over year. Starting this year, January through March, first 3 months of the reporting year, we're still up, but we're up collectively 6.4%. And if you dive into the details, some are up a little bit more than others. This is just really showing us what we've been saying ever since about the middle of last year, which is things are going to start to flatten out for a couple of reasons. We don't have any new capacity per se. So what I'm hearing from the area hotels is that so far this year, they're looking at a good year. They're mostly saying it's probably going to be flat. Lodging tax will probably be flat, and revenues are flat with last year. And most of that is because occupancy is softening and rates are still going up. So that's a general statement, but we are expecting this year to be a lot flatter than last year. Lots of factors there, recessions, people traveling other places and so forth. The wheels certainly aren't coming off the bus, but we do expect to see some flattening here. So I wanted to just share with you some highlights of our, what we called our fall campaign. It actually ran through January. So we don't typically advertise for the summer. Typically, summers are always really good and they kind of take care of themselves. So our focus is really on advertising the destination for spring and fall travel and somewhat for winter travel. So we really focus on those shoulder seasons or off seasons compared to peak summertime. So this particular advertising campaign, as you can see, ran pretty heavily October through January. It was comprised of print media. We had a big ad out at the airport. We did a lot of digital media and television. And I won't show you the TV ads. They are on, you can go to olympicpeninsula.org/YouTube if you'd like to see any of those ads. But basically our television ads ran on Como in Seattle and KATU in Portland, primarily drive markets. We had what we called generic ads, which basically said, you can't get any more Northwest than the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. And then we created co-op opportunities. So we worked with our partners in Sequim and Port Angeles and Forks, and we created some fun specific ads that featured those destinations. And again, the tagline was, you can't get any more Northwest. It's been part of our campaign for a couple of years now. And then this just gives you a visual on what some of the digital ads looked like. So we did both search and display ads. And this would have been a 2-tile ad that would have said, it would have popped up. You've seen them when you're searching. We based it on various demographics. And so if you were in those demographics and it popped up, you might see one that said, when you're happy it's raining in the forest, you can't get any more Northwest. Olympic Peninsula, click there, took them to our website to get more information. And again, we created a co-op partner ads, like the one in Forks, when the creatures in the forest are real and mythical, or the one for Sequim, when lavender comes in fields, not bottles, you can't get any more Northwest, and then the destination, Sequim, Washington. So if you didn't see any of those ads, that was by design. We weren't talking to the good folks of the Olympic Peninsula. You're already here. So all of our digital advertising was targeted in this broad, primarily drive market, Washington, Oregon, just east of the mountains, really targeting primarily that drive market, especially for the shoulder seasons. So what did it produce? Well, we did a spring campaign and a fall campaign. As I said, the fall campaign ran through January. So these numbers are as of about mid-February. the total estimated impressions, campaign impressions, how many people potentially saw our ad, was almost 18 million. I think that's just a wonderful, extraordinary number. And how did that result? Well, what we can track is how our website performed, because all of the ads directed people to the website for more information or to order a travel planner. And you can see here, the red line is the 2022 campaign. And we saw a 12% increase in our website users over the fall campaign the previous year, which is the green line, which was already quite a big jump. So just looking at our website as one of the measurements, we can see that people are responding to the ads and looking for more information. It's a lot of words on the page. What I'll just point out here is that our Google and Microsoft search and display ads generated over 42,000 clicks to our website. We had a higher than industry average conversion rate, meaning people took action when they saw the ad. We had a 26% search conversion rate, which was 6 times the industry average, and a 3.75% display conversion rate, which is almost 10% above the industry average. So lots of activity, lots of action taken. We also ran a sweepstakes as part of this campaign, and had over 5,000 people respond and sign up to the sweepstakes. And it also netted us a 3% increase in our contact list. And these are people I'm going to show you something in a minute. These are people we are in contact with every month. So what's that mean in dollars and cents? So this slide actually is the cumulative campaign. So this is both the spring and the fall campaign from last year. Our total spend for those 2 campaigns was a little bit over $250,000. We saw through our measurements, through website activity, through applying some industry standards as to how people react, how many people go to your website, what's the conversion rate, and so forth. We saw a 7% increase in our website users, which translates on a low to mid scale of about 2.3 to 4.7% revenue. So the net of that was that we feel these ads specifically generated somewhere between 2.9 million and $5.8 million in revenue to our area. So that's a range of 11 to 22 times return, meaning for every dollar we spent, we generated at least $11 and possibly as high as $22. So I think most of us would agree that's a pretty good investment on our expenditures, and we've been really pleased with the campaign. Other marketing, just not the whole thing, but just some highlights here. I mentioned that we generated an increase in our subscriber list. Well, what do we do with that? We do a monthly e-news to over almost 54,000 opt-in subscribers. That list has been growing over the years. So we're now monthly communicating with almost 54,000 people. We have an open rate that's just north of 30%, which is a really strong open rate for our industry. And a click-through rate hovers around 3.5 to 4.5%. So how this works, hopefully you all are signed up. If you're not, you're welcome to shoot me an email. We'd be happy to sign you up. Over the years, we used to try to cover all things, all Olympic Peninsula all the time. And that was a little overwhelming even to me. So we've changed this up. We sort of feature an area of the Olympic Peninsula each month. And over the course of the year, we get around to everybody. So this one that you were looking at, which was our April e-news, actually happened to talk about Grays Harbor County, the Quinault area and the beaches around Grays Harbor County. It also featured our waterfall trail, which is always popular, and state parks. The one that's coming out in a couple of weeks will feature Port Angeles. So we move the feature story around. There's a blog on our website, a story on our website that ties to the newsletter. And then we also feature upcoming events. We always have a standing information on the national park and the national forest, and then other things as as they pop in. But this comes out the first of every month. So we like to stay engaged with our consumers to just continue to inspire them to plan a trip. We also, one of the things people don't really see so much of, but sometimes they see the effect of, is we have quite an extensive PR and communications activity going on. We work really closely with the state of Washington Tourism. So as they have gotten back up and running, they have a great PR agency that they work with. We get a lot of leads through the state of Washington Tourism, as well as through the Port of Seattle and Visit Seattle. And these larger entities are really our partners in trying to market the state and our portion of the state. We certainly get people that come to us directly. We work very closely with the PR firm that does Aramark's media coverage. So we get leads from them. And what that does is it gives us an opportunity to bring writers or content creators into our area to experience the area and then hopefully go back and write about it. So just some of the coverage we've seen this first quarter. We had a wonderful story in a publication in the UK called Wanderlust UK. That couple was out here in November, and I have a great shot of them with Tommy Ferris just drenched out at the beach in November with the biggest smiles on their faces. They just had a great time. So we were covered in that story. Northwest Travel and Life, which I'm sure many of you see, had their spring issue featured the Lake Quinault area. It also touched on spring breaks closer to home and touched on Squim and the Dungeness Spit, and then amazing coastal hikes, including Rialto and Hole in the Wall. So we had a lot of information peppered through that publication. And that's a publication we've worked with for years and years and years. They often cover the Olympic Peninsula. National Geographic had a great story on this grand trail will one day connect Washington, D.C. to Washington State. And I'm sure you can imagine what that's about. So we've got publicity on national levels and some big publication, and then smaller publications as well, and a lot of social media content. This is just some of the content. Some of these writers we've worked with, some of them we haven't, but we track those that are covering it. And one of the more recent ones that came out, I see Matt on the call. Don't know if you've seen this one yet, or Matt, seen this one yet, Matt, or not, but there's a online service called Thrillist, which tends to address travel, food and beverage, adventure travel, that sort of thing. We had a writer that was out end of last year on a couple of assignments. Apparently, we didn't know he was doing this one. We knew he was doing another assignment, but he also covered experience life as a lighthouse keeper and featured the Dungeness Spit Lighthouse. So that one has tremendous social media reach, huge social media reach. So kind of excited about that. Those kind of trips are called familiarization tours. And we do them with media. We also do them with travel professionals, tour operators, and travel agents, primarily from our overseas markets. So just real quickly, we've already finished 3 of them this year. 2 of them were aimed at the travel trade out of Europe. And one was a social media content creator out of Eastern Washington, focusing on off-season travel and family travel. Today, as we speak, we have a phenomenal German photojournalist that is here on the peninsula. This one came to us through the Port of Seattle. We've been working on this for almost 2 years now. He's finally here. And I would say he writes for a magazine called Terra Magazine. And I would say, think National Geographic for the German market. And you may or may not know the German and the UK markets are our largest overseas markets. And I think this just bodes tremendously well. I can't wait to see the article. He's going to have some real hand-holding VIP experiences here, but he really wants to cover the back. Well, he said he wants to cover the back country, but we'll call it. We've got him connected with the National Park Service. We've got John Gussman taking him around. We've got Tommy Ferris escorting him on some trips on the West End. So he's going to see a lot of really great stuff, and I'm excited for that one. And then the next one coming up is going to feature a family with accessibility needs, and they really address, they have a big following on their social media, and they really feature how the outdoors can be more accessible. So we get a lot of requests, but we try to take the ones or pair ourselves up with the ones that can work with the pillars of what we're trying to promote. And we're always big on off season. And unless it's a real exception, we really politely decline those that want our help for summer travel, because one, we can't get rooms, and two, we're not really trying to promote summer travel so much. What we are going to do, this one little slide with a lot of words, I just want to give you a heads up, because I hope all of you will engage with this. We've been talking about this for several years, and COVID. So we are about to embark on an Olympic Peninsula tourism strategic plan. And when I say we, it's not me and my office. This is really the collective partnership of municipalities and governments and tourism industries across primarily the North Olympic Peninsula, but we will write this for the Olympic Peninsula as a whole. So the goal, as with most strategic plans, is really to engage broadly with not only our industry, but economic development leaders, local governments, public lands, tribes, and our community citizens to create a 5-year vision and a roadmap for what do we want tourism to the Olympic Peninsula to be in the next 5 years. I've been in this industry a long time, and I think typically we've always said more is good. Well, more is good in the right places, and we have capacity in the off season, but we don't want to just drive more people to the Olympic Peninsula in the summer. We want to make sure we have diverse audiences. We want to make sure we're balancing the impact, the economic value of tourism for our communities with the resident sentiments. I mean, everybody moved here because they love this area. So undertaking a tourism strategic plan and having a roadmap for where we want to get to is going to be great. The funding is all coming through lodging tax funds, so it's not any, public tax funds. So in that way, Clallam County, Jefferson County, and Port Angeles are the primary funders through their lodging tax funds. My shop is overseeing this process, but we've had a wonderful Olympic Peninsula Strategic Tourism Planning Committee that represented a variety of voices, primarily here on the North Olympic Peninsula. And that group has successfully reviewed and vetted 10 proposals. We sent it out to over 24 vendors, plus we published it publicly. We had 10 qualified responses, all excellent proposals. We got that down to 4. We got that down to 2, had a few more questions. And just last week, we signed the contract with the successful vendor, which is a company called MMGY Next Factor. You'll be hearing that name a lot over the next year. They're an awesome company. They're out of West Vancouver, BC, but they work globally. And they have a very successful track record. They work a lot in the Pacific Northwest. And incidentally, it wasn't a factor in the decision, but incidentally, they also are the company that did a preliminary destination survey that we did 4.5 years ago. And we presented at the Tourism Summit that year. And that was really sort of the genesis of us getting ready to do the strat plan. So much to come. We are just having our kickoff meeting next week on Zoom. We've got the team coming out here mid-May to get their own impressions of the destination, and then that will officially kick things off. So it's a year-long process. Many of you have been through strategic planning processes before. It will engage everyone, I hope. I think Lori and Colleen and I will be reaching out to you for opportunities for either town halls or surveys or online meetings that will happen, because we really do want that input. We need that input if we're going to continue to have a thriving tourism industry on the Olympic Peninsula that has a positive impact and doesn't negatively impact our great communities. So just real quick, some of you know a lot about this. Some of you might not have all this information. I just called it the WSDOT update. You know, the big thing happening for 2023 for all of us, certainly impacts the tourism industry, is what's up with WSDOT. So you're probably aware of the fact that the first salvo was we're going to close the Hood Canal Bridge for 4 weekends. And first it was May, and then it was May, June, and then it was going to be August, September. And, you know, we get it. It's an important project. I don't mean to diminish it. It's a really important project. But man, having the bridge closed for 4 weekends in the heart of our season was causing a lot of us angst. We spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to communicate that, mitigate that, and then voila. WSDOT said, well, nope, we're not going to close it for the weekends. And that's a good thing. We were very excited to hear them. I think, you know, we've been talking about this with WSDOT since last fall. They've attended a lot of public meetings. They've certainly engaged with the tourism industry, and I'm sure many others. And I think they heard a lot, and they took input, and they kept trying to make it better. And so now, as of April 10th, the Hood Canal Bridge is no longer going to be closed for 4 weekends in August. They're now doing their work primarily at nighttime. It will impact 2 weeks in May and 2 weeks in June, mostly nighttime closures, as you can see here, pulled from their website. And then what I don't have on this slide is there is one more phase that will occur in September, ostensibly also at night, but probably to be advised on that, I think. So they've been able to kind of chunk up the project and do it at times when it will hopefully be less impactful to everyone, though it will impact everybody. So WSDOT was kind of the Hood Canal Bridge was kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's certainly the one that got all the press, but for us out here, probably the one we ought to be watching equally close is the fish barrier removal project. 3 words I think we're going to all know very well over the next couple of years. You're probably familiar with the legislation that requires this work, but originally when we started talking to WSDOT, the fish barrier removal project for 23 was going to be these 6 little orange dots. And subsequently, they have said that the only project they're going to do in 2023 is the Eagle Creek project, that the balance of these are deferred to 2024. Well, what does that mean to us? Basically, it means, you know, some version of shifted lanes, reduced speeds, alternating traffic backups. It has to be done in the summer. They have to do it in, I think, between May and the end of September. I would just point out this, the balance are to be deferred to 2024, because I think 2023 is going to be the warm-up act for 2024 and 2025. At least as it's laid out now in 2024, we won't have a Hood Canal Bridge closure, but we will have 2 major roundabout projects underway, you know, on that sort of main entrance to the Olympic Peninsula in Jefferson County. And we'll have several more fish barriers underway. And of course, the Elwha Bridge is underway, though I don't think the main impact of the Elwha Bridge will be felt until they do the cutover, and that's not scheduled till 2025. But there's a lot going on. WSDOT has a lot going on. It's all important work. It all impacts all of us in whatever business we have. So how do you keep up with all that stuff? Well, really, WSDOT's going to be the authoritative source, because a lot of this stuff does change very regularly. They have encouraged everyone to go to their online open house page or to refer to the project work pages. I would say the WSDOT app ought to be on all our phones. You can sign up for email updates. They do social media, etc. One of the things we're doing to try and pull all these wonderful links together in one place, primarily for our visitors, but really hopefully for any of us, is we're setting up what we call a travel alerts page on our website, which is olympicpeninsula.org. So olympicpeninsula.org is the regional destination website for locals and for primarily for our visitors. And then we've created this little travel alerts button, which I'm happy to provide to anyone that wants. And then that travel alerts button can go on your website and it'll click through on the URL. It'll just click through directly to our travel alerts page. And we're going to try to keep that really simple and just say, here are the hot spots and here's the link where to get the detailed information, because WSDOT's going to change this stuff faster than I can keep up with it. So we want to get everybody as close as possible to the main link they need, because it can be a little, WSDOT has a ton of information, but it can take you a little while to navigate around their website. So we're working with the communications team in the Olympic region, and we hope to keep this as a viable resource for all of us. And once it's up and live, you know, I'm open to input. Encourage your input and let us know how it's doing for you. And that's what I've got. My contact information is there. I'm happy to take questions if there's anything I can answer on any of that.
Great. Thank you so much. So I did put a question in there. And I know Bruce asked if we could get the slide deck and put it
You
up
bet.
on our website. That would be terrific.
bet.
My question was about hotel rates. So, I mean, I was thinking about if we talk to visitors, is there a rule of thumb about, you know, off-season rates for hotels, or, you know, this much less than peak season, or shoulder rates are this much less? I know that our the restaurant rates stay flat or are not connected to off-season or
Right.
peak or anything. Just getting in is the challenge. So is there any rule of thumb?
Supply and demand. I think it really varies, Colleen. You know, different hoteliers have different philosophies about that. I mean, if you're a small operator, if you've got a bed and breakfast, maybe you don't vary your rates that much. Maybe you say, you know, my service is X and this is the rate I can get and this is the rate I'm going to charge. My experience is that generally, and I don't want to speak for all the hotels on the Olympic Peninsula, but I would say generally there can be a 30% difference between an off-season rate or a rate in January versus a rate in May or even July. That's a general answer. I mean, they will change, but yes, generally, because there's more demand in the summer than we have rooms. I mean, I'm not aware of any of our hotels that are really gouging. It's not like when you have the Super Bowl come in and they suddenly charge a $500 premium every night. But we've got some pretty hefty rates going in the summer, you know, this last summer. And when I speak in generalities, it's hard because if you're a 5-room bed and breakfast versus a 100-room hotel, it's going to vary. But, you know, if you looked around last summer, some of our 3-4-star hotels were pushing $300 a night. And in the off season, those rates might even be half of that. So it just really depends. I think, you know, rates on the Olympic Peninsula have definitely pushed up over the last several years, and the hoteliers keep an eye on one another. They know, they understand what the demand is, and they try to, you know, kind of price themselves accordingly. Sure.
I saw that. So a couple questions on yield management that Patricia wrote about. And then Matt Hewish just put in the chat. Do you use any predictive and analytic software in your planning?
That is a great question, Matt. And I'm going to say that I will have a better sense after our initial meeting with with MMGY, which is next week. They have a variety of tools they use. And when we were talking to them, you know, we kind of speaking broadly about some of the different tools they have. So I will make sure I ask that question more specifically when I meet with them.
So just two comments. One is I love the data you collect. It's amazing. I mean, I just think you keep your pulse on a lot of metrics, and that tells a great story kind of after the fact. You can trend everything, but I know there's a lot of, and I know that intuitively anybody in your industry, including you and your colleagues up here, know that certain things, gas prices go up, people stay closer to home, or inflation happens and people do this. The responses are somewhat predictable. I don't know. And so I just wasn't sure if you guys if there's software that takes advantage of all of those external factors, and if you're able to test those predictions against reality, other than it just seems like looking backwards is one thing, but trying to anticipate would be kind of a fun exercise, if nothing else, just cerebrally, to kind of see what might be happening. So anyway, it's a new area that would be fun to get closer to.
Well, and I hope when you have a chance to speak with these folks too, you can ask that directly. I don't have those software tools. We depend on a variety of consultants that do. There are a lot of data gathering programs and tools and reports and things that we can access. The interpretation of that data, is usually a little more art than science.
Okay.
Sometimes, but there are resources. I mean, there's some great resources. Destination analysts down in California, and this is what they do, is surveys and trends and that kind of thing. There are other companies that we can tap into. So I did want to say too, just anecdotally, usually I would have the county-wide economic impacts of tourism, and like you said, Matt, it's in the rear view mirror. That data doesn't come out for a couple more weeks. It's usually mid-May when we get that. So it's just a little early, but I will of course share that when I have it.
Some of those things I have family that's in kind of family theme park kind of things. They're more local, but I remember like they looked forward to, I can't remember what it was. Inflation or whatever, but people wouldn't go to Europe and they would stay local, it'd be more staycations and all that stuff. So they could kind of plan according to external factors. I'm not close enough to know that, but it was interesting, just the the kind of science behind people's behavior, and we're all subject to finance and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, whatever. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm very impressed with your data collection and reporting. So
Thank
ROI,
you,
right?
ROI. We'll keep ROI. That's what our goal is. Try to figure it out.
So let's see. Jim McIntyre had a question, and then also Bruce Emery. Jim?
Unmute myself here. Here we go.
Hey, Jim.
Marsha, excellent. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Very good. Good presentation as always. You're the gold standard in terms of useful information, I think.
Well, thank you for that. That's very kind.
Just a question on lodging tax receipts, that slide, compared with occupancy rates. Inflation having affected the price of lodging, that may mask the upward trend in the tax receipts may mask the actual occupancy rates. And so do you have any stats on occupancy rates that I could get from you offline as opposed to lodging tax receipts? That's question number one. And then I want to alert you and everybody, you may not have noticed it, but there's at least a conversation going on about VRBO regulation. I know that the County Planning Commission has a draft change to the county ordinance regarding that. And I know there's been talk in the PA City Council. I want to make sure that we consider, while we're thinking about VRBO regulations, that we consider the capacity tourism accommodation capacity, and we don't do anything that harms that. You know, while we're trying to solve the overall housing problem on the peninsula, you know, that's a serious problem for everybody. I don't think there's any question of that, but I'll shut up and let you answer.
Well, Jim, I'll tackle the first one first, which was occupancy rates versus as opposed to revenues and lodging tax receipts. There are some good tools that we can subscribe to. The sort of industry standard is called Smith Travel Report, or STR. The challenge is, in an area like ours, it's only as good as the data that's taken in. And if you're in Seattle, where you've got a ton of chain hotels and big hotels and that kind of stuff, the Smith Travel Report's great because it gathers almost all of that. Most of the chains participate and so forth. The challenge we've had here is that a lot of our major players don't report their information to Smith Travel. So we will get a comp set that will be the Red Lion and the Holiday Inn Express in Squim. And, you know, and Aramark isn't even reporting their information. So it's some information, but it's, you know, it's not really reflective of the diversity of lodging that we have. So it's sort of useful, but not 100% useful. Other tools that we have, I mean, I can certainly tell you over the last 5 or 6 years, the impact of the growth in the short-term vacation rental has certainly impacted us, no question. I mean, I think most of you on the phone know, with the exception of Seven Cedars Hotel, which opened during the pandemic, we really haven't had any new capacity here in the larger hotels. So we haven't built capacity. It's got to be, a lot of this growth has to be driven in rate. And the demand has been different. I mean, when I first started 7 years ago or so, you know, we really were pretty much Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then it started falling off. And, you know, a lot of the hoteliers will tell you now, fall is pretty solid for most of us. Last year, it went well into November. You know, our hotels were running great occupancy and henceforth great rates well into November. So I think collectively we've been successful in encouraging people to come over a longer period of time. So the overall occupancy has grown, and the rate has certainly pushed. So there's no question that some of that growth is in the rate. That's the short or the long answer there. The VRBO, or short-term vacation rental, question is probably a whole nother coffee with Colleen. It's not true. Just here. It's all across Washington. All the small communities are dealing with it. It's all across the nation. Again, a lot of the reason we've been able to have this growth in people coming here in the summer is because we've had growth in the short-term vacation market. And I'm sure everybody on this call has probably stayed at a VRBO or an Airbnb and found that sometimes for some travel, that really works better for you or your family than a traditional lodging. So we have benefited from that, and the individuals that own those properties have hopefully benefited. But it's all about balance. And I think that's probably what we're hoping to achieve with this strat plan is, how do we, you know, the word sustainability is kicked around a lot. And I was at a meeting just yesterday when someone said, well, what does sustainability mean? Is that economic sustainability, or is it ecological sustainability or social sustainability? And the answer was yes. You know, we have to find balance. And I think that's what we're going to be hoping to achieve through this strat plan.
Okay.
I hope that answered.
Great. Thank you. Bruce?
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, thank you, Marsha, by the way, and I agree with Jim McIntyre that this information is highly valuable. And regarding the short-term rental question, do you have any data, I guess, on the numbers that give us a comparison for, you know, kind of the breakdown between the percentage of tourist being accommodated in short-term rentals versus our existing hotel systems?
I have some data points
Look like
that,
you're
that
in a
need,
zone, and it looks very brilliant.
Sorry,
hitting on
just
your
a
left
minute.
leg.
Oh, I'm gonna have to mute
Yeah.
someone. Okay, just a minute here. Oh, there we go. Okay, go ahead, Marsha.
no problem. I do have access to some data that needs a little massaging, so I can't answer your question right off the top of my head, but we do subscribe to a report on the short-term vacation rental market. And every year we go through and try to validate the information we have on the traditional lodging units. You know, do they still have the units they have? Are they still open? Did they close? Did they convert to something else? So we're in the process of doing that right now. And then I do have some access to data about the short-term vacation market. So we're working our way towards that. Some of this data gathering and data assimilation will be part of the early work we'll be doing for our strat plan.
Thank you. I look forward to talking to you about this another time. So thanks.
Happy to, you bet.
Great. And Janice.
Hi, Janice.
Hi, this is my first EDC coffee, and yes, this is a hell of a first impression. Thanks for a great presentation, Marsha.
My pleasure.
I am new to Port Angeles and would like to get involved. Does the Olympic Peninsula Visitor Bureau have volunteer opportunities? And if yes, how would you encourage getting involved?
Well, thank you for asking. I appreciate it. My contact information, and I see Amy on the call, I think so. Amy, if you can pop my contact information in the chat, I would appreciate that. We don't run the walk-in visitor center. So the Olympic Peninsula Visitor Bureau, and by extension, the Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission, we're the marketing guys. We're kind of the behind the scenes guys. So we don't do, we work with the folks that run the visitor centers, but we don't have that front facing operation. But I'd be happy to get to know you. We do have opportunities, like our Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission meeting is open to the public. It's the first Thursday of every month from 11 to 1, and pretty much going to be on Zoom going from here forward as we move into the summer. But I'd be happy to have a chat with you offline, or you're always welcome to attend our meetings and just sort of get to know folks in the industry virtually as well. Welcome to the area.
Yeah, and Janice, your question is really timely. Today from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Vern Burton Center, the Port Angeles Chamber is hosting the first ever volunteer fair. So if you put your email in the chat, I will forward this flyer on to you about it. So you can, they'll have all sorts of opportunities for volunteerism. I just looked back at the email thinking, was that yesterday or is that today? So excited that it's today from 4 to 7. So
Awesome,
let's
thank
see.
you.
You're welcome. So I also put into the chat a link from the University of Washington's Washington Center for Real Estate Research, and they post housing affordability indexes, and which is basically comparing the cost to purchase a house, not renting, but purchasing a house versus relative to the median income in our county. So we bounce from the second to the third least affordable in our state. San Juan's always number 1. And then we're either number 2 or number 3 with Chelan counties. So we're not the most expensive homes, but relative to what people make in our county, we are the second or third least affordable. So that's just something, I think that has to be weighed for our workers.
And Colleen, you probably
Yes.
know, or others on the call probably know, that Chelan County is certainly very aggressively trying to figure out how to deal with this short-term vacation rental balance. Again, it's all about balance. I don't think any of us would say, oh, please don't have any more short-term vacation rentals, because frankly, that would cut a lot of our business. It would impact all of our businesses if we didn't have those to provide for, and it would impact a lot of people's income. But
Mhm.
there is a balance that's
Yeah.
needed,
And-
and lots of people are trying to figure it out.
Places like Olympic Medical Center that currently completely relies on traveling professionals, nurses, doctors, that kind of thing. Those folks stay at these short-term rental locations, and they are, you know, they've got new data out, and I won't go into that, but in 2022, OMC lost $16 million. In January, they lost 1.4 million. They have 78 days of reserve left. They are not the worst off hospital out there, but the drivers for their inability to break even are, number one, the reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid are at 60 and 65% of actual cost. And then the other issue is that they've lost a lot of their local professionals, just have left the industry. And so they have to hire traveling professionals, which charge 2-3 times as much. And so that just makes their ability to provide services at cost unviable. So, but for those traveling professionals, until we can figure out the that issue that OMC is dealing with, and again, that's more of a state level issue than it is local, and a federal issue because of the reimbursement rates. You know, the short-term rental issue is important beyond just the tourism industry. It's
yeah.
also our medical industry. It is relying on that. So again, I think balance is a key word there that we need to make sure we don't make massive changes that would negatively impact one area or two areas and make, you know, only incremental improvements for housing. So just food for thought.
Well, and to tie with that, Colleen, I think you brought up a good point. You know, I wear one set of lenses, and I know very clearly that's my lens to look through, and there are many other impacts. But for example, we talk a lot about lodging tax because, as I said, that's a currency we all deal in. But lodging tax is generated on any lodging stay less than 30 days by anyone. It's not just tourists and visitors. It is traveling nurses and medical professionals and business people. And guess what? When they start working on the roads and all these contractors come in from somewhere, if they're here for a 2-week stay and they stay in a hotel or an Airbnb, we will get lodging tax as a result of that. So that which generates the lodging tax is beyond just the tourism value. You know, the caveat there is like a traveling nurse or something, if you stay 30 days or more, there is no lodging tax charge. So, and that's just a detail, but it's all integrated. It's all looped together. So.
Absolutely. And Patricia made a comment. Yeah, even if someone wanted to build a unit that served, and we've even been talking about 200% of area median income, it's not possible at 200% for someone that's making that amount to be able to find housing. And a lot of that is a lot of the Washington State Building Code Council mandates that have increased prices. All right, let's see. I saw one more thing come in. Yeah, Jim's comment. So, Marsha, sounded like
Yes.
you were gonna say something. Is there anything you want to share?
Well,
before
I
we-
see a question. I see a
Yeah.
question here
Yeah.
from Randy Brackett
Uh-huh.
about EV vehicles. I don't know if Randy's still on the call.
I think he is. Let's see. Yes, he is.
I just see the question about, do I have information about growing EV vehicle use here in Clallam, and what does Clallam need to do to accommodate that? I don't have good data on that. I see Mike Doherty on the call, and Mike was always my go-to guy about EV use, but certainly we are seeing more and more EVs coming out here. We actually had a writer out here last fall. We're waiting for her article to publish about EV travel on the Olympic Peninsula, which I'm excited to see the article when it comes out. I'm sure that will be part of the conversation as we're going through the strategic planning process and looking to how we want to move forward for the next 5 years. I'm sure the topic of EV travel and what does that mean will be a part of that conversation. But unfortunately, I don't have any data that I could put my hands on right away.
Got it. Well, with that, Marsha, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of the information and your really exceptional approach to tourism and supporting our county and all the other counties and cities in our area. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you,
Really
Colleen.
a
It's a
great
team
person.
effort.
Yep. Yep. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you for your time, everyone.